Hello and welcome to 30-Minute Mentor. I'm Julie Haberstick. I'm Seed&Spark's events and content producer and a filmmaker myself. I'm so excited to share this conversation with you today. I also want to introduce and thank today's ASL interpreter from the sign language company over here. This is Bill Pugin for helping us make this event more accessible. I also have to send a shout out to our sponsor, the Tennessee Entertainment Commission. Their mission is to increase job opportunities for Tennessee's creative and technology community. So if you're based in Tennessee, if you have friends in Tennessee, let them know about Tennessee Entertainment Commission. They're a great resource. For those of you who aren't familiar with Seed&Spark, we're a platform built to support creators from crowdfunding and education all the way to impact distribution. Our crowdfunding platform has an 88% success rate, which is at least twice almost any other platform. We have 0 platform fees, personalized campaign feedback from our specialists, and a new patron circle where industry leaders like Emily V. Gordon can contribute up to $5,000 to your crowdfunding campaign. If you're looking to build your audience and raise funds for your creative project, please check us out. We're at seedandspark.com/crowdfund. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce writer-producer Emily V. Gordon. Emily V. Gordon started out as a couples and family therapist before moving into a career doing booking for stand-up comedy for live audiences and TV, which led her to a career as a writer and producer, including productions like The Big Sick, Little America, Crashing, and the upcoming Welcome to Chippendales and more. She's a member of Seed&Spark's Creative Action Board and a patron in our patron circle. Emily, we are so glad to have you with us today.
Hello, I'm very happy to be here.
Well, jumping right into it, out of curiosity, what, in your opinion, does a half-baked story concept look like?
I mean, I have so many examples from my own life.
Don't we all?
I also want to apologize up front. My voice is a little hoarse. I was at the Wakanda Forever premiere last night. And if you would rather just me spoil that entire movie instead, I can do that.
I think that's why don't we do that?
Poor usage of everyone's time. It's interesting. The reason I kind of wanted to do this idea was that I do feel like I myself have had, as well as some of my friends and people who kind of approach me and ask me for ideas, will go, I have this great idea for a movie. And then what they will tell me is one element of what a movie should be. And then they wonder, including myself, I'll include myself here. You kind of are like, oh, this is such a great idea. And then you wonder, like, why is this not working? Why can't I get this to work? And it's because you only have one piece of it. Just for example, when I was a teenager, I was a bad kid. And one summer, as a punishment, my parents sent me on tour with NASCAR.
How is that a punishment?
Because I was not a huge NASCAR fan, and my uncle happened to be the chaplain of NASCAR at the time. And my parents, I think, wanted to get me out of the house and also wanted to, I don't know what they wanted for me, but they sent me on tour with NASCARs. For an entire summer, I hung out inside race car tracks with NASCAR drivers and their families. And when I have told people that, they go, wow, that's a movie.
Yeah.
What it is a setting. It is not a movie.
Okay.
Yeah. So I kind of tried to think of like, so what are the things that make, what are the things that make an idea a fully fleshed out? What all do you need? So one, you need a setting or a world. This would be NASCAR in this example. You need a character, a main character or characters, but I'm going to go with just one character, a character with a problem. A way that they're moving through the world that is not working for them. You need other characters around that character that are inherently the worst people to help them handle that problem, but like kind of have to, like, that's part of it anyway. Those are obstacles. You need stakes, which are actual consequences if that problem is not solved. And you need essentially 3 pivot points where the story spins in another direction. And none of that comes from, I had to go on tour with NASCAR for the summer. There's so much more you have to add to it. And I think for me personally, I often was quite frustrated, like, oh, it's such a cool idea. And you need you need those 5 things in order to really develop something from a basic idea into a screenplay.
That's fascinating to me. And I feel like any one of those things feels like a great jumping off point.
Yes, that's true. You can start anywhere. That's 100% true.
The one that stuck out to me as something that I think is really, really difficult is the stakes, especially if you're not telling something that's more, I guess, that has the stakes baked into it. Like if it's not a save the world story. Do you have any advice on kind of finding those stakes and infusing them into not just the plot, but the very concept?
Yes, I do. Stakes are the hardest thing. They're very, very difficult. I think it trips a lot of people up because I think people end up assuming, well, the stakes are the protagonist's well-being. Like that's what's at stake. If you're not telling like a world ending, we have to save the world kind of tale, often the stakes are very internal and are like, is this person going to be okay? Unfortunately, that doesn't always translate into adding tension into a movie. In fact, it makes it incredibly difficult to infuse tension into a movie when all of the changes are internal. And as you said, I was a couples and family therapist before this. And as a therapist, part of your job is you have to diagnose and kind of keep track of a client's symptoms based on their external actions, not their internal, because people lie, people don't know what's going on with them, people won't talk to you sometimes, but how would you know someone's depressed if they didn't tell you that they're depressed? What would you be seeing them do? What actions would you see them do? Would they have like kind of like stringy hair because they haven't bathed in a few days? Would they not be dressing themselves in the way that they normally do? And weirdly, those tips, you kind of have to think of that on an even larger scale when you're building stakes. So you can find stakes that kind of represent things like fulfillment or happiness or being free, but they need to be reflected in the story in concrete, observable ways. That's the thing I think that people miss. It's why in a lot of movies you see a protagonist being like, oh, am I going to get through the talent show? It's not about the talent show. We all know it's not about the talent show. The talent show is representing, will that person have the courage to perform in front of an audience? And what does that mean about them internally, that they've made that journey? But you have to, for the most part, okay, Bagel, my cat agrees. She'll be here in a moment. You have to add those external kind of benchmarks so people know, oh, this person wanted to audition for a band, was too chicken to do it. The journey that they go on through the movie, by the end of the movie, whether or not they get into the band or not is unimportant. Are they brave enough to do the audition? The internal versus external stakes are a very, very big deal to me. And they need to kind of, they need to go hand in hand, but the internal stakes are your things like fulfillment, courage, happiness, and your external stakes are how we as an audience are going to see that they've gotten through those internal stakes.
That makes so much sense to me that you are taking, like it is the work of the writer to show like that's
and not tell. Turns out
that's what we do. And
I want to say too quickly, sorry, a character truly does not have to get the outcome that they want for their external stakes to be successful. I think that is incredibly important, that it isn't always like, oh, great, he won the race. It's about what they get out of being in the race that really ends up being the actual stakes.
Can you say more about that?
It's one of those things where, like, I think TV is really good at this specifically. A win is not always a win, and a loss is not always a loss. And I think I love endings, and I love conclusions to movies where the character gets what they need, but not necessarily what they thought they needed. They don't get what they want, but they get what they needed. I think that's the way humans work too. We don't always know. We don't always know what we actually need. We know what we're like, if I just get this like car or get this job or get this whatever, everything's going to be fine. And then you get the thing and then you're like, why am I still miserable? What's happening? And I think that's important. I think that's really important when you're kind of building a story as well.
that that's brilliant, and I feel like I just went to creative therapy there. For that. A quick question, because to me the thing that's really interesting about this topic is about the story concept, which is also to me, I feel like the place where you need to really hammer down your concept is when you're first starting out or when you're explaining it to someone else. So I'm curious if you feel like when you're pitching a story to someone, is it better to give them that dry log line that kind of leaves them wanting more, or a full pitch that goes through those 5 elements that you talked about?
You mean like a pitch, like for someone who might buy this?
I mean more of a someone just says, "Oh, you're writing a script. What's it about?"
Yeah, I think there's when it's a good time to be like, oh, it's a story of a goth. I was very goth. A goth teenage girl on tour with NASCAR for the summer as punishment. It tells you, and the inherent, it's a goth kid. She's not going to be comfortable at NASCAR. You already see tension. I think the best way to do it, the elevator pitch version, is you can already see what the tension is going to be, what the fun of the entire idea is going to be. There's a script that I've been working on about a couple that gets they become superheroes, but their powers are tied to each other, and they're about to get divorced. You see already the tension of what's going to happen. Do they keep the powers, or do they just walk away and say, who cares? The best log line, you don't have to follow any formula, although the formulas are good. Let me see in one sentence where the tension is. And if you don't have that, you need to keep looking. You need to keep working.
Well, on that note, we've got a couple creators from Seed&Spark that have some questions for you. And the first one that we're actually going to bring up Michelle. Oh, hold on for one second. There we go. So the first one we're going to bring on is Alex. Nice. I had to rearrange my screen to make sure I could see everybody. We're going to bring up Alex Nystrom, who his experimental short film called 4 Nights and a Fire raised over $13,000 on Seed&Spark. Congratulations. And it is currently in the final stages of post-production, which is very exciting. Alex, we're happy to have you.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me. Nice to meet you, Emily.
Nice to meet you too.
Yeah. Like Julie was saying, I'm pretty far along in the process and getting to the point similar to what you guys were just talking about. You're starting to talk to more people about it. The film's nearly made, and you passed way past that original pitch. And as you make the film, I feel like the pitch may evolve or be refined, right? And so my question is sort of in that regard. My question is, how do you balance the pitch for a personal story inspired by real life events without the real life events or inspiration overshadowing the story you're trying to tell?
I have a lot of experience in that, given that the first movie I made was about how my husband and I met. And I like to think of it as it's a tantalizing little juicy piece that you can throw out. And then I think it's important to kind of move on and say, and then that's the kind of jumping off point for what the story is. And then we kind of go from there, because I think if you stay a slave to what the truth of it was, sometimes you don't get to tell the best story, because as we all know, reality doesn't always make the best stories. I like to if I'm doing a thing, I'll kind of go through okay, so let's just take the Big Sick, for example. A Muslim guy and a girl, a white woman are dating. He's keeping her a secret from his family, and then they break up over it, and then she falls into a coma, and he has to hang out with her parents. And all of this is true. I do the lean in and and all of that part is true. And then kind of building out, and then you have these, you have the lead character who has to spend his time with these parents who are incredibly warm and also incredibly kind of nosy and in his business. And that's where it kind of starts departing. And that I kind of like to start with, here's the very basics. This is true. And then now here's how we've kind of built on it. But I think it really depends on the story. It depends on how much you do move away from the facts of it. But always remember, like, yeah, you're always trying to tell a story. You're not trying to tell someone. It's not a documentary. And kind of having an awareness of that when you're pitching to people, I think is good. Having that awareness and communicating that awareness. Like, we know this is not a documentary. Here's the story we're telling.
Mm-hmm. That's fantastic. I think it's a difficult line to follow. You know, I like that insight to kind of lead with as if it's any other story, right? And then you're like, and by the way, this is true. And I think what's difficult with my particular project is The Big Sick, which, by the way, I'm a huge fan. It's a great film.
Thank you.
I think it's really standing the test of time too. Mine is more that's a comedy, and mine's more of a straightforward drama, and it's a sad story behind it. And so I think that's difficult to. I feel like sometimes I start with the truth or like the real piece, and then their face drops, and then it's almost like I wonder if they just black out right in that moment.
It's interesting.
And so it's like how like that's where I come from with this particular pitch. But yeah,
that's interesting. I almost wonder if you could, like, I'd say prep them ahead of time, and by saying, and I know, like, being like, I know this is very intense. I know this sounds quite intense, but here's why I felt like I needed to tell this story. And then I almost think you could go, there's a universality to any person's specific experience. You can always kind of draw, like, this is the big thing that everyone should get out of this. And this is like, these are the things that come from it. And I wonder if maybe that's a good way to do that. I don't know. I hear what you're saying, because we're like, hey, it's a girl in a coma, and hey, we promise it's funny. It's hard to do that. You kind of watch people go, oh. So I would maybe do that, like head it off at the pass and say, I know this sounds really serious, but here's why I think this story is for everyone. I don't know. Try it.
Alex, thank you.
Well, I really appreciate this. I think it's very helpful.
All right, we're going to bring up our next creator, Michelle Malicampos, whose film La Maroma is $200 away from being fully funded. And
I'm on it. If you'll send me a link, I'm on it. I got you. I got you.
Send it. Michelle, thank you so much for being with us.
Oh,
Michelle, we can't hear you. Can maybe your headphones aren't fully plugged in? No. Oh shoot. All right.
okay, when this happens.
Technical difficulties. Michelle, do you mind? Do you want to just be on screen and I can ask the question for you? Oh, you can't hear me either?
Oh, something went way wrong.
Oh,
okay.
So we have a sound situation. All right. I'm going to bring you off, Michelle, and we're going to ask your question, okay?
Sorry, Michelle.
Right, hold on.
I'm still going to finish with the 200, I promise.
Well, we will follow up with Michelle, but we do have Michelle's question over here. So stand by. Let me just pull that up for us. Which is one of her question was so great. She asks, when presenting a story concept to a potential contributor who doesn't know her or her previous work, is it better to make it personal in regards to how the story relates to her experience, or to make it more strategic in terms of how an audience will connect to the story?
Oh, both. I'm giving the classic. I think you have to do a little of both. I think any pitch that I do, I always start with, here's what attracted me to this story. Here's why this story is a big deal to me. Or here's why this is important, if it's part of my life. Here's why this is an important story to tell. And I think it's going to resonate with a lot of other people because it's got A, B, and C, and it does this and it does that. And I think that's going to be very juicy for audiences, and they're going to love it. I always start with the personal. I think if I don't know why I'm attracted to a project, then what the hell am I doing? Why am I here? What am I? And so I need to first know that. And second, I think it's just a great way to kind of get people hooked right away and lead with wherever the passion is, I would say. And to me, very rarely is the passion, I can't wait for everyone to see this, because the reality is maybe no one will ever see it. So the passion for me is always then like, I'm going to die if I don't tell this story. I've been thinking about this for so long. This is so important to me. I've got to tell this story, but I really think people are going to dig it. And here's why. So it might be a cop out, but for me, it's a little bit of both. I start personal and then go wider. Because to me, and this is, again, I'm going to bring up my therapy background. I would always be in sessions with clients that I had sometimes some things in common with, sometimes nothing in common with. And that's where we started. But underneath that, there's only so many horrible feelings in this world. There's about 5. There's, I'm ashamed. I'm unlovable. Honestly, that might just be 2. There's only a few deep pains, and we all have them. We all have them to different degrees, and we all have them from different experiences. And that is not to discount those experiences, but merely to say, we all know what it feels like to be frightened and to feel alone and feel unloved. And if you can start specific and then dig into that deep well underneath to go, and that I was terrified, and I thought something awful was going to happen. And I'm sure other people have felt that way and felt alone. And I just always start up top and then dig into that well. That's what we're all doing anyway.
I think that's so brilliant, because that also gives people that little pinhole to start to get connected to your story, and then you take them broader. Like, brilliant, like, so smart. That makes so much sense. Thank you. We had a request from someone. Could you repeat the 5 elements that you mentioned?
Sure. So a setting / world is number 1.
Okay.
Number 2 is a character or characters with a problem. Number 3 is other, and this is kind of part of it, characters that are inherently the worst people to handle that particular problem, but have to do it anyway. Number 4, actual consequences if that problem is not solved, which that's stakes. Number 5, 3 pivot points where the story spins in another direction.
Can you talk a little bit more about those pivot points? Do they have to be absolute 180s? Do they have to just get you deeper into the action? What do those look like?
To me, it's, and this is just how I do things. End of Act 1, you need to get your story moving in another direction. The midpoint, usually there's some information that comes out or the story moves in another direction. To me, it's usually has an emotional component. Mm-hmm. And then end of Act 2, the story needs to spin in another direction. Now, people will have all these things of like, oh, it's the best thing that ever happened, and then the worst thing that ever happened. And if that applies, great. It just needs to go in a different direction in those 3 points. And keeping it as simple as that, I think has been helpful for me, because sometimes I'm like, wait, that's not really matching up with the save the cat or the whatever. Mm-hmm. No, it just needs to go in another direction. And if you don't have another direction, you need to find one. A complication, more information. There's so many different directions a story, a love that is brewing when it shouldn't be. There's so many directions your story can go in. That is another direction.
Full of possibilities.
Yeah. Terrifying, right?
Oh, Lord. Was talking to someone yesterday who hasn't written for many years and is deciding to just get into it. And she said, I don't know if I can just white page it. And I loved that as a verb.
Yeah, it's a terrifying thing. I always start with those pivot points. I start with who my character is at the beginning of the movie.
Okay.
Who my character is at the end of the movie. Mm-hmm. And then I fill in end of Act 1 pivot point, midpoint pivot point, and end of Act 2 pivot point. That's where I start. That's my skeleton that I hang everything on.
That feels like a very clean and clear skeleton. Thank you for that.
Sometimes. As always, it works until it doesn't. And then, hey, who knows?
New for Halloween. Skeletons that sometimes work. Emily, thank you so much. This has been so lovely. I guess the last question that I always like to ask is, do you have any kind of final parting advice that you would give to especially emerging writers?
Do your best to not get discouraged, and do your best to not get bitter over other people's success. I have watched bitterness destroy, and comparison. What is it? Comparison is the thief of joy. I might have gotten that completely wrong, but I've watched bitterness destroy really, really talented writers. It'll get you. Like bitterness will get you and it will eat you up. So don't think about anybody else's success. Nobody has the same path. Some people get successful that don't deserve it. Some people are incredibly talented and never get success. And yeah, keep pushing, but don't get bitter. It only hurts you. It never helps.
Thank you so much, Emily. This just from all of your expertise and advice, just thank you very, very much. We're so honored to have you here today.
You're welcome. This was great.
A couple other quick people I have to thank real quick. Just want to thank again our sponsor, the Tennessee Entertainment Commission. Also to Alex and Michelle for their thoughtful questions. Bill, thank you for your interpreting today. Always a pleasure to have you here. And of course, the Seed&Spark team, including Frankie, our senior marketing manager, who has been monitoring the chat with us. And to all of you with us today, thank you. If you enjoyed today's event, please check out our upcoming free workshops and programs at seedandspark.com/events. And if you're starting your crowdfunding journey, or if you're just thinking about it, go ahead and check out seedandspark.com/crowdfund. We're here to help. Thank you, everyone, and have a great rest of your week.